Before we start the DIY, I wanted to go ahead and add a quick piece into our video here. One of my subscribers / forum members had suggested that I go ahead and detail out to you guys why I specifically chose the TT-RS brake setup as opposed to going with a more mainstream true BBK, such as like the stop techs. I know that APR also has one, Alcon has one, so there is a variety of different BBKs out on the market. When you go with a true big brake kit like the Alcon or the ST, cost is going to be a big factor. I believe some of those kits you're running into $2,000, $3,000, even $4,000 in terms of cost. They're going to range anywhere from, say, a 4-piston all the way up to like an 8-piston, and the rotor size are going to vary substantially. Now for myself, because I wanted to share something that was more budget minded for a majority of my followers, as well as having the unit be a plug-and-play setup, that's the reason why I went ahead and chose the TT-RS kit. In terms of stopping power, you've got 4 pistons compared to the one larger piston that the S3 has, so you've got better clamping force there, and you've got a 370 millimeter rotor, which is massive by all means. In addition to the massive 370 millimeter size diameter, I believe the thickness is either 32 or 34 millimeter thickness, so that also helps out with heat dissipation. So whatever setup that you guys have decided upon, whether you're going with the TT-RS or if you're going to go with the mainstream Alcon or the ST, even APR's big brake setup, you're definitely going to have an improvement in the stopping power over the S3's OEM setup. For you track junkies, I think what it's really going to do is it's going to offer substantial stopping power as well as a decreased level of fade that you're going to have over the numerous track day sessions that you're going to have. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get you guys started on this TT-RS brake retrofit into the S3. What's happening, Audi S3 Fanatic fans? It's Peter, your Audi S3 Fanatic. So today's DIY, I have quite the treat for you. It's been a project that's been sitting on my shelf for the last several weeks, and it's time for me to finally install my TT-RS brakes and rotors into the S3. So definitely looking forward to putting that kit on. It should provide a pretty good braking upgrade from the current setup that is on my S3. So here is the TT-RS setup. You've got the 370 millimeter rotor, you've got the 4-piston brake calipers, and then you've got the pads and the accompanying accessories that come with the kit. Okay guys, so I have my S3 up on the quick jack, and I wanted to go ahead and just discuss kind of my action plan. First thing I will probably end up doing is pulling out some brake fluid from the brake reservoir, because I do have to remove the stainless steel lines. Earlier I didn't mention with the kit, I went ahead and purchased TT-RS brake lines to make the swap over just a little easier. So I will be pulling out some brake fluid from the reservoir. Once I've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and break off the 21 millimeter bolts that hold the caliper onto the hub assembly, and then from there I'll go ahead and remove the rotor and kind of keep you guys updated at that point, but I will be recording. Alright guys, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to cover here some of the items that you need to remove. Now this particular item right here is going to be your brake line. There's going to be two bolts, one on top, one on the bottom. The one on the very top is an 11 millimeter and the one on the bottom is a 17. So you're going to have to remove that to remove the brake line. Now this little unit right here is going to be, I believe it's a T25 or a T20. I went ahead and removed that so it allows me a little easier access back there to get to that bolt. Let's go ahead and kind of move forward here. This is a little clip that holds the brake line in. You're going to have to dislodge or remove that as well. And then let's take a look at the very back of the brake. Here's one of the larger, see if I can show you here. That's one of the 21 millimeter bolts that you're going to have to remove, and then there's the other one. So once those are removed, you should be able to pull the caliper off. These two bolts down here just hold the caliper onto the bracket, but since we're removing the whole thing, you really don't have to remove it. You would though if you were just doing a service pad job on it. Here are the two caliper back bolts that you want to remove, and I just have a nice breaker bar on here as you're going to have some force on it. I believe that it's actually torqued down to about 120 to 125 foot-pounds of torque, and you're able to notice that it breaks off relatively easy with a 24-inch breaker bar. Here you're gonna go ahead and remove the brake line retaining pin, and all I did was I used a flathead, turn it up, that should come out. Now you can pull the line off just like such. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and add a quick addendum to the front caliper here. What makes it a little tough is that your pads are going to be essentially pressed upon the rotor, so it's really hard to pull this whole assembly out. What I ended up doing was just disconnecting this bolt and one up here so that I can actually pull the piston portion from the bracket. That way this will come out and then I should be able to pull the bracket, and then I have full access to the rotor. We're going to go ahead and remove the caliper, and I'm just going to put it on my little bucket here and out of the way. Now the bracket can come out, and as you guys can see, my pads are pretty worn out. I just wanted to show you a quick comparison of the S3 pad, and then you've got the TT-RS pad. Surface area wise, it almost looks like they're about the same, but I think the main advantage that you have going to the TT-RS is that your braking force is going to be further out because it is a larger rotor. That way it's able to stop a lot more efficiently. And then instead of one large piston, you actually have a total of 4 pistons that are clamping down on the brake pads themselves. So that's definitely an advantage. Now I've got the caliper and the bracket off. I'll straighten out the wheel. I'll go ahead and remove the rotor. To remove the rotor, you want to remove the retaining pin, and that is actually going to be a T27. So we'll go ahead and remove that. Theoretically, the rotor should come off, but it's been on the car for 40,000 miles. What you're going to have to use is you're going to have to use a mallet, and you're going to be tapping all over this area here until you're able to dislodge the rotor from the hub. So after I gave it about 10 or so good taps from the mallet, the rotor is able to slide on off. Because the TT-RS uses a larger rotor, you're going to have to remove the dust shield. I did not purchase one because I really don't need it. And there's going to be a total of 1, 2, 3. I believe it's also going to be T27s, but let's just double check real quick. Yep, it's going to be T27s. So we'll go ahead and get that removed. Alright, so the dust shield is off. I'm going to go ahead and mount the rotor on.
It's time to unswaddle and set your baby free with our new system.
So we'll go ahead and put the rotor on. Now I'm going to go ahead and mount the brake caliper on and double check that my wheel is going to fit with this setup. Okay, so we have the rotor and the caliper on. Now it's time to see if this wheel will fit on with without any issues. Crossing my fingers here. Just spinning it real quick, making sure it looks good, and it is definitely a success. Now to put it back, put it all together. For this portion, I am going to go ahead and put some grease on the back of the pads. I'll put it on the pins and the retaining bracket here as I assemble the pads into the new caliper here. All I simply used was just caliper grease here. We'll just put it about halfway in there. Once you have both of the caliper retaining pins or the bracket pins here, as you can tell it's kind of misaligned. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of turn it with a little flathead screwdriver here, just to be it nice and safe. Alright, and as you can tell, the pins themselves, they're actually they rest right into these slots here on the retaining pins. So brake pads are in, we are set. The next step here is we're going to go ahead and disconnect the line. I'm still letting it bleed all the fluid out, and I'll go ahead and attach the new stainless steel lines on here. With the TT-RS brake lines, the the line will not fit into the stock S3 line location. So what I'm going to have to do is just zip tie it a few times to make sure that it's nice and secure. But I do not believe it should be an issue. There's actually plenty of line as I'm looking at doing a full lock on the other side to this side. It should be perfectly fine. Again, I'm going to go ahead and zip tie it in here. That is pretty secure. ECS does sell brackets for this to make it fit. I chose not to go that route because it's $85 a bracket, so just a little too much for me. Now what we'll go ahead and do is I will disconnect the stock brake line, and as you can tell I have covered this whole area with some doggy pads. I've got a towel here to absorb some of the brake fluid that's going to come out from here. I have went ahead and pulled out about 120 cc's of brake fluid, so not too much should come out, but I just wanted to make sure I'm nice and safe. Alright guys, so we ran into just a little hiccup installing the ECS brake line onto the stock setup. Now the problem that we ran into is, again, we're using a TTRS brake line, and the S3 and the the TTRS, the bracket here is going to be different, and I'll show you real quick. If it's a little hard for you to see, but this is the stock brake line, and it is actually cut this way at an angle, so it fits in there. The TTRS brake line is actually up and down, so parallel to each other, and it doesn't fit into that stock location. Thank goodness I have a Dremel. All I ended up doing was just dremeling the hole a little larger, and as you can tell, I was able to get the stainless steel ECS line in there without a hitch. Now all I'm going to go ahead and do is tighten up the brake line, and we should be completely done with the rotor and caliper and pad assembly to this side. And of course you want to go ahead and obviously torque down the caliper bolts to 120 foot-pounds. Okay guys, so final step here, we're going to go ahead and bleed the brakes. Looks all good to go from the front. Here's the driver's side. Heading over to the passenger side. We are done with the conversion, and once again I'm going to go ahead and just bleed the brakes now. Alright guys, so here's the final product of the job. TTRS brakes installed, and it clears it quite well. Go ahead and show you guys. You kind of see how much clearance that I have. I probably have about, again, 3 or 4 millimeters of clearance. Now I'm going to go ahead and take it for a drive